Okay. Good evening. We're going to have a discussion about the MPS bond that's on the ballot on May 6th. I'm part of the committee for Midland students and taxpayers, and we're the ones sponsoring all of the yellow and black vote no signs across the county right now. Our sources of data, we're using data from MPS website, Form 3881. We've been attending presentations and communicating with staff from MPS, and also the michiganschooldata.org. And this slide presentation will be up on our website afterwards as well. My name's Renita Bonadies. Joe and I have been attending school board meetings now since July of 2021, and regular attenders, lots of public comments on those. We've also been to at least 5, I think, of the presentations, and maybe more, of MPS's on this bond particularly, just to hear more information, listen to the Q&A and the responses to the Q&As. This is just a list of some of the different topics we're going to be covering that have different facets of this bond that may not be covered in the same way publicly, so we want to get the information out there. This flyer was one that was mailed out to pretty much the whole community, I think, so I don't know if all of you got it that are in the district, but it should have gone to almost all the households. I know we received one at our house. So we're going to kind of cover these in the course of the discussion this evening. First topic is Northeast Middle School, 75 years old. Does it need to be replaced? Don't know where that just went, Joe. Can you reset us to Northeast, please? It's like something happened, it took off. I will be editing this part of the video. Huh? I gotta go back quite a ways. You can't jump. I don't either. It's not moving. See, God knew why we didn't have a full house. Can we go back, Joe, or not? Restart it?
I don't know. I Calvary Baptist did.
Yeah.
Well, like Calvary Baptist, why? The Christian school built.
Yep. Okay, I think we're all set, so we'll start this again. So this is the postcard that we all received. And Northeast is 75 years old, and the question is, does it really need to be replaced? So one of the sections on that was talking about aging facilities. They discussed the teaching methodologies have evolved and improved over the years. Because of this, MPS facilities must be enhanced to support student learning, which is something we hear about at our school board meetings. Is there's just a new method to teach that requires a whole different structure in the classroom in order for the kids to learn effectively. This is a presentation that we watched back in December of 23. At that point, there was a Barton Mallow report that was put out, And they gave 3 different options for Northeast, and one of them was what they're putting on this bond, which is to replace it within the next 8 to 9 years. The other is to reinvest in it, and it could last until it's about 102 years old before replacement in 2052, or we can do some interim repairs now and about 2047 do a replacement of it. So the argument was it'll cost you $48 million more, and we kind of questioned, but do we even need it at that point? So can we get it to that point and see where we're at as a community and a school district? So they said that they decided in 2015 that this needed to come offline in 10 years, so therefore they did minimal maintenance on it just to help it to last. And then all of a sudden we were told not only could it not be refurbished, now we have to replace it, even though if you look at the bond, it's not even proposed for another 9 years. But we're assured it will be kept safe and useful during that 9 years. So we don't know why the narrative changed from the possibility of replacing parts and upgrading as opposed to having to tear down the whole building and replace it. So refresh maybe, but replace we question. This is another report. This is off of their website, and this is the Barton Mallow study that on this, it even shows there was an improvement that could be done. That was never presented to the public as an option. The only option the public was given was this 85 million one up here that said it needs to be replaced. So the public really, as a whole, didn't even know that was an option to do an enhancement to extend the life. I did hear at the Friday meeting that there was a comment that it could cost 41 million. Even the 41 million is here, but that was a running total based on money that was already put in back in like 10 years ago and stuff, as opposed to the current. So the actual number on their slide was 34 million. So the initial costs of the 2 options, 84.4 versus 36.6. Cost over 25 years with interest, you're looking at 144 versus 62. Cost difference over 25 years, $81 million. And that would give us time to reevaluate what the need really is in the community. This is the report that they just put online. So this is out there. This is a study that the state of Michigan did of structures around the state. And this is a rather lengthy, I think it's 49 pages or something. So you can go through, and it goes through each of our school buildings, did a whole walkthrough of all the different systems, told what was good, what needed replaced, gave cost estimates for all the schools. So on this, you're looking at about $6 million of repairs to all of our buildings to make them healthy, according to this report. And you'll see that up here, Northeast was showing $6 million. So it's the state's report. I don't know how valid it is, but it was the one that they walked through with somebody from our district while they did this of all the buildings. This is just MPS data. We found inconsistency with building dates. Only 3 of them were consistent between the 3881 for the bond back in 2015, the 2025 3881, and then an FAQ that is on MPS's website. And we weren't even sure why all 3 of those could not line up with the date that these buildings were built. So if 75 years is the new replacement norm, Northeast is the second oldest building behind Carpenter. But then the next ones that are going to hit 75 fairly soon are Plymouth and Midland High. And the question is, can the taxpayers afford to keep replacing buildings instead of maintaining them? This is a building in Grand Blanc. It's one I attended when I was in 6th grade. That building is still standing today. They mothballed it for 20 years from the mid-70s to the mid-90s because they didn't need it. They reopened it. It's now a magnet primary school, and my grandchildren go there, so it's still functional. It may hit its end of life soon, but certainly not at 75 years did they tear it down. So the aging facilities, Again, Midland High, 68 years old, but they have $43.9 million in this bond as a remodel. The end of life is coming up in just a few years, and so are they going to tear it down after they just put all that money in it that we're going to continue to pay on 10 to 15 years after the building has been torn down and replaced? So if this is the model and the narrative we're hearing, do we really have a plan for the future that's affordable for this community? School choice, is that causing overcrowding? And do they go hand in hand? Space utilization, something they make a big issue of at all of their presentations. They talk about their designated amount of seating capacity they would like. They would like everybody at 85%. But we looked at the school choice numbers and what they're doing in the elementaries, where they're claiming they are at that capacity or even above 100%. So on this slide, this is what they show the current utilizations at. So you'll see Woodcrest is over 100. They say they have a target of 85, but you'll also notice district pre-K is another one of their goals in this whole program. So is school overcrowding by design? If MPS really wants to hit that 85% target, why are they allowing school choice in those buildings that are already at capacity? And just a reminder, school choice is optional. It's not a requirement. It was asked at one of the meetings during a Q&A, and they asked it why we don't restrict that. And they said, well, if we do, the other districts might not let our kids in. And the response of the person that asked the question was, do we know that for a fact? Well, we would just think that. Well, the reality is if they have capacity, they're going to take the students because it comes with dollars. So this is the school choice from last year. They're getting ready to release the one for this year. And you'll see this is Woodcrest. They left 46 seats open for school choice to come into that building, even though we're at 100% capacity now because of that. So the question is, why did they allow all the seats to be open if they were really that crowded to begin with? And this is, we actually just got this one updated to 24-25. And you can see the top line, those are the students leaving MPS for school choice. And the blue line are kids coming into the district, which you can see has actually been dropping a little bit for those even choosing to come here. This, you can't read very well, but it'll be on the slide deck to just show where schools, where the students that are coming into the district are coming in from. And this shows where they're enrolling out of the district. So this looks at, this is the data we got for this school year. And again, you'll see how many school choice. Those were resident school choices, which means they moved them within the district by choice. And then you'll see this one at Woodcrest. We still continue to take out of the district people and out of the county even into our schools. So I did a little analysis, just assuming they actually filled all the seats they made available on their request list. And right now we're sitting at 93% in our utilization of our buildings. If I go back and pull out those school choice numbers, we're actually sitting pretty close to 85%. So the question is, are we really serving our students and making them the priority by keeping our capacity at the level we claim is our goal? Or are we more interested in getting the money for the students and we take as many as we can fit and overcrowd our schools? This chart shows you on this one, the green line is just our students that are in district. The blue is all the students that are coming in through school choice, and this is since 2017. And the orange line down here is our 85% target utilization. So without the school choice coming in, we're actually pretty close to the 85% they say we need to have as a target. This was one of them that they presented in the December of 2023 as a before and after utilization scenario. And they claim after utilization, after the new building is built, that we're going to have utilizations as low as in the 70s at these buildings. But then I was given something by an MPS staff person, administrator, below 75 to 80% may indicate inefficient use, potentially leading to consolidations or closures. So, again, it's their data, and you go, it doesn't really make sense, but actually it does, because they're really not opening up as many classrooms as people are being led to believe. So are we really getting what's being promised if our current utilization's 93? Our class size is actually going to be smaller. They tell us, yes, they'll be smaller. Will Northeast have the same capacity? We're guessing, but we don't know what the real projection is. And do we know the projected capacities at all the buildings? We've not really seen that, except that other slide, which would tend to say we're not properly utilizing the space in our buildings. So what's missing from the presentation? The utilization numbers, after all this money spent, is still very foggy. They don't discuss class sizes. They say the only place, if this doesn't pass, to take money out of the general fund is going to have to come out of the teachers and the parapros to do the repairs that are needed. We say that they're become very top-heavy in the administration at MPS. Why not cut there? So this is a sample of the budget since 2019. We started going in 21. So I remember when we started, the budget was somewhere in the 80 million range. But I noticed that at the March meeting that we just had, they just voted to increase the budget over what it was. It was 113 million, now it's 116 million. So that's a 42% increase just from 2019 until 2025. You'll note inflation's only gone up 24%, but we've really seen almost no change in enrollment during that time either. So that's all overhead. And of course, our test scores aren't showing that that's affecting them. For those that aren't aware, we had a new superintendent that was hired last year about this time. And shortly after she was hired, there was a new budget that came out in June, and it was approved at a meeting. And then we noticed on the July agenda that someone now had a new title, and we actually added a fourth assistant associate superintendent position. And you'll see that's about $230,000 a year, which is equivalent to a little more than 2 buses, just as an FYI. So why did we need yet another superintendent at the head of our district? So this chart shows you what's happening. This is where our costs are going per pupil. This is our enrollment and where it's going, and these are our test scores, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So right now we'll switch over and look at the pre-K.
Hi, I'm going to help go over a topic of pre-K. So, Great Start Readiness Program. Stand here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so on the mailer, one of the second points on there is preschool early childhood trends. So the district already has some pre-K students in this GSRP program. They're in one building. They want to expand this program. So to move these littles and to expand this program, what they want to do is move them into the elementary. So take them from one building and move them into all potentially 7 new buildings. So it's going to require more coordinators, more certifications, allowing these students to be put in an age group that goes up to 5th grade into a building with all of that, and potentially bus rides. So right now, their pre-K programs are housed in one building at Old Elementary, Carpenter. It's 99 years old. It still has fireplaces, which is apparently a huge hazard, but right now they're still using that building, so how big of a hazard? Again, they want to expand this because they can only house so many, even though it's an elementary building, it should have housed how many students at one time. And they want to take it offline, so not continue to use it, and to move it into potentially a new elementary school, plus the other 6 that are existing, 2 classrooms at all of those elementaries across the district. So you can imagine how many students they could fit if they could fill that, but of course, that's where all this utilization is being taken up with, is all these additional students that are now going to be classified elementary. So, and they're going to need new pre-K coordinators and certifications across all of the district elementaries then. Also, if this bond goes through and they no longer need Carpenter Elementary for this pre-K program, they could potentially sell it to generate income. But instead, in the plans for this bond, what they want to do is demolish it. So pay $663K to demolish it. Similarly, what they did with East Lawn. And then they sell the property for some small amount. So they're not really gaining anything back. Instead of using it or selling it. And why do they want to demolish it? Do they want to keep competition out so that we don't have potential new charter schools coming or any other child program that could be put in there? Or it's just a piece of Midland history, and it'd be sad to lose it if it's not really end of life. Pre-K, tuition-free pre-K, is a state program, and the goal is to have 75% of the 4-year-olds in this program. Of course, you get more money for pre-K students to be able to hold them and license them in the room. They need more adults per pupil. But does this, having 2 classrooms added to each elementary school, of course, creates a need for a new elementary school because you're adding 2 new grade levels potentially. But again, it's not legally required. It's an optional program from the state, and they want to put on the taxpayers the cost of these building spaces to bring this pre-K program in. It's not that there's not already pre-K offerings in the area, and public preschool is already being offered. It's being offered in the Carpenter building. It's being offered in other areas. There's a Head Start program. And then there's private preschools. And some of these preschools are either going to have to adapt and start offering this as well, which means they're going to have to become public and remove religion from their preschool programs, or they're potentially going to close. So, of course, it's going to be highly competitive if you have another huge preschool offering in the area that's tuition free, because that's the convenience of bringing this in as a bond proposal. Okay, let's look at enrollment trends. Okay, so some conflicting material, or maybe it's not conflicting, maybe it's what they intended. They put out, they said that the population of Midland is moving into the north, so it's moving up into the area north of US 10, and they said 600 plus elementary students are moving to that area. And then on another part of the, or on a part of the mailer, they said 600 pre-K to K5 students. So which students are they counting when they say there's a giant population up there? We say, what's the actual number? Is it pre-K or K5? The students we're required to educate are K through 12. So is it 600 or is it not 600? Or is it like more like 300? So the committee asked MPS, and the response was that there's no difference. But we're also told that the enrollment numbers can only count K through 12 for Michigan reporting standards. So there is a difference. But MPS seems to be muddling the numbers and including pre-K, and of course that increases the need for these elementary schools. Oh, sorry. So again, they're only allowed to report K through 12. But they are also projecting growth in their 3881 form of 2.55 over the next 5 years. Where if you look at their previous enrollment, this starts back at 2000, it's been dropping. There was a significant drop, and now it's a little more leveled off. This is MPS compared to the state enrollment and how the trends have been looking. So MPS has been dropping even more than the state, historically and in the recent years. It's just dropping less than it has in the last 25 years. In the recent years, it's still dropping. So what is the real school enrollment trend? It looks like they may have ignored factors such as downsizing, birth rates, the fewest babies born since the 1940s, potential homeschool and private school options, drawing more students away. So their estimate of 2.55, does it hold weight that it's going to increase in the next 5 years? A little myth or fact, they did a projection population study where they pulled out this 2.55 number from, and we questioned some of their the numbers they plugged into the study because they don't quite match what they also reported themselves to the Michigan State Reporting website. So is the trend going to go up at 2.55, or is it more likely to stay flat or go down? Because it's unlikely with real numbers here that they're going to get that 2.55. So let's take a look at academic achievement and proficiency now. MPS school board likes to talk about being in the top 3% or 3.5% of the state. Now, that's one number. It's based on one grade level, and what it's based on when you look into their presentations is SAT scores. So SAT scores for our 11th graders taking a test to get into college. So they are, in fact, top 3% of the state. The state of Michigan, which is 41 out of 50 for education, by the source they gave me, U.S. News and World Report. So they themselves admit they're top of the bottom. So, and even considering that they're top, all of the trends, which is on this lower graph here, are a little hard to read, have been going down. So the state of Michigan's been going down, and so have MPS students. So they're going with the trend. And they seem to be okay with that, but they do bring out in their slides some reading proficiency scores. So the top graph shows 3rd through 6th graders, and the blue bars is MPS. So it starts at 3rd grade where they start taking these tests, and 3rd graders are over 50% last 2 years ago, couldn't pass this test and weren't proficient in it. They finally jumped just over the 50% mark, so a little less than half of the students are still not at reading proficiency, but they can cheer about that because they went up slightly. There's also a wide range between the different elementaries in the district, with Central Park being the lowest at 44%. So their newest building, even though they did move some advanced students in there, so there's a little bit of offset, but this is their newest brand new modern facility. And I'll show you in a minute where it's moved from, but it's currently at 44%. And I brought out on the bottom here 3rd through 5th grade, so you can see they don't jump a ton between 3rd and 5th grade even. And there are a couple schools in the state that get much higher scores. So it's possible. Central? Yeah, was built in 2017. So it's brand new. I'm going to show it on the next slide where it went, but yeah, no, they haven't. I'll give it away now. This is a look at the district as a whole for MPS's third graders, and third grade's important grade. That's why we keep pulling it out. But the third grade for MPS and the third grade for the state are both trending down, and MPS is sadly getting narrower. They're getting closer to the state level. So this chart, and I hope it's a little darker this time, you can see it, is just looking at Central Park. So Central Park, the most modern of the buildings at MPS that they just built and are proud that's a STEM school as well, is supposed to support educational excellence, as they say. They took students from two buildings in the district that are East Lawn and Carpenter and moved them into Central Park. So this is an average of where all those students were testing before, and then the green is Central Park. There's one year where they blipped up real high. But the trend overall of the Central Park students, third graders, hasn't been going up, it has continued to go down. So moving them into this building, has it done anything for them? Their modern furniture, modern classroom settings? I wouldn't say so, and I'd say these are the students that probably need the most help out of all the students in the district. Their scores for this elementary, these population of students for these elementaries, sit right about the state level, because that red line's still the state. So, could they be doing more for them than just building them a fancy new building? Yes. Okay, so back looking at this chart, the spending is in red, going up. Your enrollment, I just went into more detail on, has been trailing off, but basically going down, and test scores are going down. And this is not only third grade here in the green, but that SAT score is in the yellow. So they've all been dropping off, despite all that spending. Also a note, there's students in the district that are either economically disadvantaged or have disability support, and it's 36% economically disadvantaged and 16% for students with disabilities, and there's additional money that comes in to support those students, but is the district really helping those students to break the generational cycle that some of them are in? It doesn't seem like it. So one more thing they point out on their mailer is academic excellence. So excellence to me isn't defined by what they seem to define it by. Is it really dependent on the learning space, or is it their teaching quality that's missing from, and maybe it's not the teachers either, maybe it's just what they're told they have to do. But Central Park, latest and greatest, still been dropping. And then so to bring all these new upgrades in and say this facilities improvement is going to help academic excellence, I don't see the evidence.
And thank you for that. So we're going to switch over. We've covered a few of the topics now, and then we're going to let Joe take over and handle some of the number side of it and the waste that's going on.
Time to talk about the money. They want lots of money. These are the unilluminated facts of what's hiding in their system. For those of you who don't know, I've been around here for 36 years. If you're not a numbers person, if you are a numbers person, I'm going to go too fast. You can read the numbers later. If you're not a numbers person, don't worry. All I want you to do is see the trends. How did we get here? Proposition A, 1994, trying to level the amount of funding for students across the entire state. Midland had a big industrial base, so we were able to have a lot more funds. We lost that access. They tried to mitigate it, didn't work. Then we went to sinking funds. 1994 was the first sinking fund, and then in 2002, sinking fund is not a bond. Sinking fund is a pay-as-you-go structure. They collect the taxes, and then they spend it. So when Midland Public Schools says we have not had debt in decades, it's true. because this isn't debt. You have collected the money first. Big difference. We failed to fund the third sinking fund in 2013, mostly because of bad behavior on the first two. The first sinking fund, the very first thing they did was put a University of Michigan quality football field into the stadium. It annoyed a lot of, that was my first letter to the editor, being annoyed with that fiasco. Anyway, Midland shrank, didn't do anything for 2 years, fell behind, and then had to go big in 2015, $125 million, $15-year bonds, and now we're in 2025 for $285 million, and it's now 25 years. Again, Proposal A was trying to level the field and couldn't live within our means, and everybody in the state was trying to do a workaround. Most people went to sinking funds, and then some moved on to bonds. Many are still doing both sinking funds and bonds simultaneously. Why did all this happen? In the 2010s, we lost population, so the per student income went down. We shut down 5 elementary schools instead of 4, and they didn't buy a lot of stuff because they didn't have extra funds in 2013-14. In 2015, we paid to tear down 4 of the 5 elementary schools, and with every school bond series, there were 3 series in the 2015, early, middle, and late, they bought buses. That'll matter in a minute. Now they're going to go big, 2 new buildings in the midst of, I would call, economic uncertainty, and they're, again, going to buy buses with the 4 series that are in this one. Quick aside, a bus lasts 6 years, and then they get rid of it, it's basically worn out. We have been financing buses with bonds. So we are essentially financing a short-term object with a long-term debt and wasting all that interest, which goes to nothing for the students. They're doing the same thing with cables, wires, networks, servers, routers, Chromebooks, they last 5 years, they throw them away, they're worthless. We're paying for them with 15-year money right now to finish the 2015 bond, and we're going to do it again with 25-year bond debt in the next bond. You have to go through with this. Ballpark numbers, we're wasting $30 million in interest for things that aren't even there anymore. Quick update as to where we are right now, before the election. This is the 2015 bond. We have gotten to the point where we are going to be getting less of a bill for the 2015 bond. You are entitled to this discount. And that's what's going on right now. This is the official bond, all the language in the official bond, ballot. And nowhere in there does it say, we're going to build a school, we're going to build another school, we're going to tear down a school. They're all generalities and vagueness in here, and they have admitted at meetings that they can change the plan if the situation changes. Key sentence, $285 million, general obligation unlimited. That means that they have assigned the debt to the property of the district. You are taking out a second mortgage on your property by voting yes, or by it passing, even if you vote no. And now they're going to 25 years instead of 15. The only thing that it says in there is 3.9 mils. It's not 3.25, it's 3.9 because of the discount that you were entitled to. This is how much is being added on what your true baseline is. That's the only interest or millage that they're required to state, because everything after that is an assumption. And I'll go through some of the assumptions that they've made as to what it will look like in the future. After we got that document, this 3881 document, they then immediately put this up on the website, which is unreadable by design. The green, puke green color is 2015, and the rest is your total. If you pull it out, there's blue bars in there. That's really the 2025 bond. And let's move it so that we get rid of the noise. Again, it's really 3.9 on the first year, and it goes up to 4.95 in 2039. It's not really 3.25 until 2051. It's a giant emotional play to make it seem like it's only this much and it's going to stay at this rate. It's staying at that rate because they are taking the discount you were entitled to in 2015. Oops. Here's the real costs, et cetera, between the information they are giving to you and what a real 3.9 looks like on the other side. Anyway, we got the 3881. It had a lot of other facts in it. They're believing they will get a 4.75 interest rate on all 4 series over the next 9 years. If that is not achieved, the millage rate will go up, you will pay more. Period. They're going from 15 years to 25 years. Why is it a benefit? Well, because it looks better. It's like buying a car. What do you want your payment to be? Well, we'll charge you this many years so your payment is down at that level. That's really what they're doing. By making the switch from 15 to 25, they're wasting $88.5 million of interest, which does absolutely nothing for the students. It just makes it sound better. Just to be clear, again, from the state documents that MPS created and submitted, total cost for this whole thing, with the assumptions, $428,333. And so we're 97% of the way to $500 million, so we're just going to call it $500 million. Another assumption, the Midland tax base will increase 1.65% annually for the next 20 years. If it does not achieve that goal, your millage is going to go up. This affects everybody. Rentals, everybody will feel this bond if it does go through. This is taxable value oscillations over the last few years. The red is a 5-year running average. You notice it spends a fair amount of time below that orange line, which is the 1.65 assumption. Matter of fact, we have not achieved 1.65 in 7 of the last 10 years. So, they like to talk about the part of the iceberg above the waterline. There's a whole lot underneath the waterline that they don't talk about, etc. This is the financial state of Midland Public Schools. The green is the income, the red is the expenses. Notice green is bigger than red. And that blue line is their general fund or a reserve. Let's look at that a little bit bigger. The reserve has been growing dramatically. It used to run in $7 to $14 million range. They're now up there at $34 million. They've got a $20 million increase in that holding that they have not been spending the money on. It's been sitting on the side, generating interest, we hope. But all the things they talk about being important, security, muddy playgrounds, etc. They haven't been doing it. And there's a pool, buy buses with money that's not costing you lots of money. And so MPS behavior looks like they're deferring and they're trying to push everything they possibly can over to the side, have this big reserve so their credit score looks better, hoping for a better interest rate. But they're not doing the things that they say are important. So, why am I here? What happens if we keep doing this 25-year bonds every 10 years? The MPS board has already said we will be back. Maybe it's in 7 years, maybe it's in 12 years, maybe it's in 10 years. But we are going to still be paying this bond when they come back. And it will be at a higher rate than the 2015 is if we do this in May. So it's stacking things up. they compare themselves to a lot of elite schools and say we have a lower millage than they do. We're on our way to achieving what they pay. So here's the same cartoon I had before, expanded up a little bit. The orange is if they put a 2035 bond on top of what's left of 2025, we're going to be at about 8 mils. If they do it again 10 years later, putting it on top of the back of a higher baseline again, they're going to be up near 10 mils. So really, we're in perpetual bondage for this system that they're setting ourselves up for. We've done it once. We don't need to do it a second time and get them addicted to this behavior. Also, again, they shift everything they can to the bonds. They're pushing buses, laptops, infrastructure, roofs. Roofs is maintenance. I mean, that's just what it is. It's a roof wears out in 20 years. It's in the warranty. They talk about it all the time. It's not like you didn't know it was coming. Again, we'll be back. This is what I call the ghost bus. If a high school senior rides a new bus next year in 2026 and his father voted yes for this bond, the dad does not know that that bus is going to be taken out of service in 2032 and he will be paying for that bus until 2050. Every bus, all these buses become a ghost for 19 years on the books and we keep paying for it. Wrong way to do this. I have to say this because I'm old. Furniture doesn't fix proficiency. I learned on a desk that had an inkwell hole in it. It was from the late 40s or maybe early 50s. I learned on it on the 70s, and my little brother learned on it in the 80s. And we could read. So now we got Central Park Elementary, latest and greatest, minimal walls, open floor space, noise all over the place. Architectural awards, no improvement. It's one of the worst proficiency schools in the system. So we need to learn how to teach. Hardware and buildings, shiny buildings don't fix it. Again, we're mortgaging the future. A colleague was talking about the bond with my wife, and their 11-year-old son overheard the conversation on the speakerphone. And the kid interrupted Mom and said, "Mom, I will be 45 years old when this is paid off." That's older than the mom was. This is ridiculous. This is generational indebtedness. Now, of course, we can be at least grateful that the 11-year-old can add numbers in his head. So he's already ahead of most. Adding insult to injury. The very first series of the bond that passes, the school is going to take back at least $70,000 or $71,000 to pay for the election that they're imposing upon us, obviously assuming it passes. And then we're going to pay $50,000 worth of interest because it's, again, 25-year money. So, it makes no sense that they're doing it with these methods to do things that are transient. Again, it's too big. There's lots of assumptions built into this, which may or may not come true. We will be in the elite class of debt if they go and do this again after this, and they're paying for a lot of consumables. It's like financing your car for 35 or 40 years. But don't read Consumer Reports before you buy the car. Oh yes, I can be sarcastic. This is what I consider the bond to really be, is a giant beast with all of these heads, and those are all the major issues that are hiding inside this bond. And then it says, "Be quiet, Joe."
So now to look at how this is going to impact us and why this election's important. Most of our elections that we go to every 2 years, they're either for a 2 or 4 year period, maybe a 6 or 8. This one's going to affect this community for the next 33 years. So this is why we're making such a big deal about trying to get information out, because we want people to understand the impact that this will have on us. Special elections, as you may know, they count on low voter turnout. That's why it's in May, when people aren't paying attention. They're busy, spring's coming, nice days. Last year in May, we had a special election. It was a millage renewal. 64% of the voters that showed up were 64 and older, and they didn't actually show up, we'll see. There are about 46,000 registered voters in the Midland Public School District. 10,000 are permanent absentee. This time we had a bunch of requests, so it's probably closer to 14,000 this year. And 36,000 of those live within the city limits, and 10,000 are in the adjacent townships. Previous elections, the 2013 sinking fund that Joe talked about that failed, there were 40,690 registered voters. You'll see that 2,304 of them voted no, and 2,081 voted yes. So that was actually defeated with only 10% of the registered voters casting a vote. 90% never even let their voice be heard. 2015 bond proposal, 15-year bond. It passed. 41,000 approximately were registered. 43,090 said yes, 4,390 said yes, 2,848 said no. About 17.5% of the voters showed up. A few more than the previous one. Last year, I pulled the information after the election. Again, here we are, sitting right around 17.5%, which means 37,290 of the voters, again, did not show up. And out of those, 78% of them were absentee. So they weren't even actually at the polls. So this year, and by the way, $133,000 that election cost last year, $85,000 of it was just for the fact that it was a special election that could have been free during a regular election cycle. This year, my guess is it's going to be closer to $95,000 because they've got a whole lot more absentee ballots. Maybe they'll come in at 90. And we also have the fact that we need to encourage other people to vote this time. This $500 million debt over the next 33 years, again, is just too much. It's going to cost this community an amazing amount of money. And as Joe was pointing out, the fact that they made it a 25-year bond, that extra $88 million worth of interest that we're paying for those extra 10 years, that's all money coming out of the local economy because we're the ones that are going to be paying it to our taxes rather than being able to spend it at local businesses for keeping our community going. And what if someone's already voted? Again, there's about 14,000 absentee ballots already out, so a number have already been cast. If somebody you're talking to, they said, but I already voted, they actually have until April 25th at 5 o'clock. They can go into their local clerk and ask for a new ballot. The clerk will spoil their old ballot and they'll get to recast it. So if they learn something, encourage them to change their vote. Big takeaway, it's just too much money. We have people on fixed income. We've talked to quite a few seniors that say they just can't afford to keep doing more. The Midland Public Schools like to say it's just $1 a day. Well, there's some people that $1 a day they don't have because they're already trying to figure out what they have to give up to put food on the table. You have renters that don't realize that they need to vote too because this is going to affect the rent. The landlords cannot absorb all of this cost in their businesses. So it will get passed on to renters. So it's important that they get informed. Small businesses, their business buildings, they're going to get taxed. So they're going to have to pass that on to the consumers locally. And we're coming off 4 years with a lot of rising inflation. So people are already feeling financially crunched at this point. So this is a 33-year, $500 million debt. And it's only about a 10-year fix because, as Joe said, they've already been telling us in the meetings that they're going to be back for more. This isn't really fixing the issues in the district. And the building utilization capacities, because we're adding pre-K and ESA, we're told, well, the new elementary, we're going to be freeing up 24 classrooms. But what they don't tell you is all those preschool classrooms and the ESA classrooms, there's 3 to 4 classrooms in every elementary that will be used by those. And so we really are giving up almost the same number that we're gaining with the new school. So the option to refurbish Northeast, again, never presented to the public, needs to be revisited, I believe. We'll be paying about $68 million of debt long after its useful life of 5 to 10 years in this bond, which is an extra $30.5 million that could have been covered in a 10-year bond instead, or out of a sinking fund and not have any interest. We could have absorbed a lot of that. And had this been a 15-year bond again, $88 million in interest this community is going to lose. So our silence is our consent. The silent majority will not make things happen and change this for the better of the future of our children and grandchildren. This election has a much longer impact, as I said. It's going to be 33 years on this community for just this bond. So if you don't vote, you have consented to the will of those that do. So we're encouraging everybody to be an informed voter. We need 60% or more to show up. We need to help the community understand the need to get involved in these elections and let their voices be heard. So you can get more information about our group. We also have a website that we keep up to date and keep adding new material out there as we come across it. And neither the students or taxpayers are going to come out ahead. This is a sleight of hand bond, and it's a hard no, at least for me. And thank you for attending.
And can you explain the 25 to bond, you're saying 33 years, I understand it, but other people may not understand, okay, 33 years, not 25 to bond.
Okay, a 33-year number that we're using, each series in this bond is for 25 years. This bond is set up to be 4 series. So every time they start a new series, starts a new 25-year window. So they're going to be moving from the first bond goes out 25 years. The second bond's another 25 from that point. So you don't actually start that 4th series until about 9 years in. And so you're adding the 25 around the 8 to 9 year mark. So it'll be 33 years from the first series being issued until the last series is paid off. So that's why it shows as a 33-year bond.